Welcome, Matt, to the World XP podcast. It's a pleasure to have you on. I think I've started to branch out in my guests a little bit and just message people in the hopes that they respond and/or are down to talk. And you're another one of the ones I got lucky with. So welcome. Like I said, really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me today and looking forward to the conversation.
Absolutely.
So for those listening, Matt is, and I'll let you kind of go into the more details, but Matt's a professional guitarist. I found him through the show Kill Tony, which I've mentioned in the last several episodes, but like they do all the shout outs for social media for the band. And I figured why not just shoot him a message and see if he's down. And so here he is. But why don't you go ahead and kind of introduce yourself, your sort of, well, I won't say job title, but yeah, your background and that sort of thing.
Right on. Well, thank you for having me, Eric. My name is Matt Muehling for all the guests. And I'm a professional guitarist here in Austin, Texas. I've been doing that since about 2008. And just trying to navigate the music industry without really knowing a whole lot about it. It's been an interesting journey for myself because I kind of had this kind of scrambled idea of how it works, which, in my mind, I thought, well, you figure out how to play your instrument, and then you spend a lot of time getting really good at it, and then, you meet a few people and people start calling you. And this idea came to me even before we had social media. So there was, the networking side of things. I didn't account for it foolishly, and it's taken me a long time to kind of not only figure out, but even realize in the first place, like that so much of it is relationships in this industry. And so, that kind of brings us to Kill Tony. I got that gig because I had a working relationship with the keyboard player, John Dees.
Mm-hmm.
And that was around the time I started realizing, like, oh yeah, I need to, like, just be out on the scene more, spend more time with the people I work with, be a good hang, be a dependable teammate, for the bands I play with, and, play the game a little more intentionally than just like, hi, I'm here, I'm good at guitar, what do you need? Yeah. John and I had a gig leading up to the pandemic. We were on a residency with this local artist, Terrell Shahi, playing at a little bar on Rainy Street called Half Step. And D Madness was in that band as well.
Mm-hmm.
And we were having a really good time with it. It was on Sunday nights, and it had been running for a couple of months. And obviously, pandemic showed up and shut everything down. But John also works with Gary Clark Jr. So John has a certain amount of visibility kind of built into his gig. And, Joe Rogan showed up in Austin, and one of the first things he wanted to do was go see a Gary Clark Jr. show. So he caught wind of John really quick. He was also very enamored with Austin, to my understanding, and he was
still is.
Yeah, and he was encouraging other comedians to move here, and one of those was Tony Hinchcliffe, and Tony took the bait, I guess, moved to Austin. I'm not real sure about how the dots all connected.
Yeah.
Between that and us, but at some point, Tony got hip to John as well. He probably went and saw a Gary Clark show as well too. I do know that Gary Clark is like a fan of Joe's podcast, and I think of Tony's as well. Don't quote me on that. But so, Tony was like, I'm bringing my podcast here. I want a live band, and asked John to put it together, and John did. In the beginning, he did have Mike Gonzalez, the drummer, on percussion, and he had a different drummer and a different bass player. And a few months in, those two guys actually got sick. They got COVID. And so they had to miss a couple of shows, and John asked D. Magnus and I to come in, and he slid Mike over to drums. And since that show, he's kept that lineup. If you go through like the history of Kill Tony shows in Austin, the first few were, half the band was different.
Yeah.
And then, once he changed it, we just kept that lineup. I think there were a lot of different elements going on there. When we very first started that gig, it wasn't a paid gig. They were trying to figure all that stuff out.
Yeah, but even so, it's not paid. It gives you guys good exposure, like to other people, anyways.
Yeah, absolutely.
So all the guests that he has on, and you get to meet all those people. But I think one of the things that's curious to me is the first time I watched the show, just I don't know if audacity is the right word, but there's no filter, which is amazing. But some of the stuff I was like, shocked is not the right word either, but like taken aback by. And then for you guys who are just sitting right there, who have to see these people bomb or like do or kill or like watch Hans Kim make out with strippers, like you've got all this stuff going on. Like, see, like even now you're laughing. Like the first time I was like, oh my God, he's actually doing it. That became a weekly occurrence. Like, how was the first time that you were up there seeing? Because that wasn't a normal gig for you, was it, at the time?
Yeah, it was not. It was not normal by any stretch of the imagination. The first one I was on was at Antone's. John asked me to do it, and I was like, I'm not doing anything else. We're still like kind of in the pandemic, so I was like, yeah, I'm down, and it sounds fun. I've never been in a band for like a comedy show.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Monday night, I'm not doing anything. I'm down, and I show up and, very quickly realized some of the elements that weren't explained in the initial invite. Like, oh, this is a podcast. Oh, there's going to be open micers all night. Oh, there's going to be really famous guests. This is crazy.
Yeah.
And so, like, it was kind of like right out of the gate, you get the sense that, like, crazy is just par for the course, Even after all those like initial realizations set in, you still get into the show, and some of these open micers are just nuts. They're just, just like walked out of the asylum and straight onto the stage. Some of these guys are just like pretty wacko. And at the end of the night, there was like a hang. There's a green room at Antone's, and we all got to go up there, and this really badass barbecue joint in town, CM Smokehouse, catered the thing. And I got to talk to Tony a little bit, and he was like, this is what it's going to be like week to week. There's going to be this food here, and, the guests, and he was like, how'd you like it? And I was like, man, this is wild, but it was really fun. And John was like, you want to come back and do it next week? And I said, yeah. But yeah, in answer to your question, like the craziness, the insanity, the chaos, it's all kind of like built right in. And so I knew very early on, well, like if I stick around, this is what I'm getting into week after week. But it's such an interesting, like psychological, sociological kind of thing to bear witness. And I was like, just out of pure curiosity, I was like, I can't wait to see what happens next. This is wild. I've never seen anything like this.
Yeah, that's how I am as well. Every Monday, I'm like, can't wait for the new one to come out because whatever ridiculousness is going to happen on the next show, I feel like it's more wild, like when you're sitting right there, obviously, than watching online.
Yeah.
Have you gotten used to like the first couple of times watching people bomb really bad and then having Tony just roast them? I couldn't help but like feel like sympathy for them. And then in the back of my head, I was like, these people are probably nuts. They don't even realize what's going on. I don't. Is there like the first time you saw somebody bomb horribly? Did you have that like pang of sympathy as well? And then did you get like, are you kind of not numb to it? But how's that adjustment been for you?
I still have that pang. I have mixed emotions. I still have that pang like every
Mm-hmm.
time I see someone bomb. But I also have this. It depends on how they bomb too. Like if they,
Yeah,
sometimes you can see them like just legitimately trying, and it just doesn't go well, and it's like, man, that's rough. Like
yeah,
I kind of like this character. I wish it would have gone better for him or her. Other times, it just seems like the stuff they said lacked any social awareness whatsoever. So instead of like feeling empathy for them, I feel more like, what the fuck? Like, you're in front of a crowd of people. What did you think was going to happen when you let that come out of you? Like, I'm just like kind of dumbstruck. And that one, like the empathy thing is still there, but like, it doesn't feel as panicky anymore. I don't like,
yeah.
I used to get like, like nervous tingles from watching some people bomb. But the other thing where it's just like people say stuff that I can't believe, that still feels just as intense. I remember a couple weeks into the show going through comments on Facebook, or not Facebook, YouTube.
Yeah.
And seeing that like some people really liked to see the reactions on my face. And Tony even approached me one time and said, like, I love that, like, you really kind of wear your emotions on your sleeve. If it's funny, you laugh, but if it's crazy, you make, we can really see it on your face. And I love that about you. So, just don't change. And it was a relief to hear him say that, so many of these moments, like sometimes the camera's not on me and I don't know it, but like there's cameras all over the room. So it's just like, no matter what, I feel like the camera's on me. But also no matter what, like when people say crazy shit, I'm just like, what?
I've seen you do that a couple of times, and like it's really funny. You and Mike as well has really good reactions, especially when William's up there and he says something ridiculous. He's like his head goes back. It's great. I was curious though, musically, how you guys. So obviously you've been playing for forever, but you guys have different sort of walk up songs for each person, and then sometimes like Tony will make I think he made it like an Imagine Dragons reference, and then you guys were playing Imagine Dragons in the interludes, and I was like, that couldn't have been planned, but you guys all know how to play it together without rehearsing. How does that work? Because I was involved in music through high school, but like never to that point where you could just do something like that off the cuff. And it sounds great as well. It's like, you can't tell, like, it's amazing. It sounds rehearsed.
Oh, thank you, man. I'm hearing this more and more from people, and it makes me really happy to know, because I mean that's basically all we're there to do is kind of like be in the moment and try to illustrate the moment musically, and to get feedback like that means a lot. Yeah, we never rehearse. There's no way like to rehearse for the show.
No, absolutely not.
And so what happens is sometimes someone will say something, and a good relatable song for that moment is something that we already all know. So like when they get ready to walk off the stage, someone in the band can just go, okay, now play Let's Get It On, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like we all know that song. We can just go. In some cases, people have like pre-requested songs for their walk-up.
Mm-hmm.
David Lucas has told us that he loves the song "Friends in Low Places," so that's why we reference that. For a long time, Tony and Brian wanted us to play Kung Fu Fighting for Hans. Well, Hans didn't like that, and fair enough. He asked me personally if like we could play this Andrew WK song, "Ready to Die," and I gave it a listen. And I was like, "Yeah, this is great. It'll be easy to put together. It's a simple song, but also it's real high energy."
Mm-hmm.
Every time we play that song, I feel like we're on an episode of Full House or something. So yeah, some of the stuff is planned as much as it can be, but then there's so many moments where someone will say something. The Imagine Dragons reference. It was one of those moments during the interview where I was like, "Well, that's the song." This guy spent a decent amount of time on Imagine Dragons. Like, we have to play one of those songs. And I already knew a couple other songs just from gigs that I've had to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I tried to pick the one that I knew or I thought would be most recognizable. And so, we've all got we don't have to lock our phones up. Everyone in the audience does, but we don't. So I'll look it up on Spotify and I'll just send the guys a link.
Mm-hmm.
And, John and D Madness have incredible ears, and like they can basically learn songs on the fly without like touching their instrument. As long as they know the key that we're going to play it in. And then Mike can, grab the groove, and as long as we can like reference the song, like play the song well enough that people can recognize it for anywhere from 30 seconds to a minute, which is basically just one section.
Yeah.
Then it works. Then it'll land. And so that's usually what happens is there'll be a moment in an interview and it'll remind someone of a song that kind of goes along with that moment. There was, we had Jared Nathan up there.
Mm-hmm.
And, his stutter is intense.
Yeah.
And he said, I don't know, he said a word that started with B, and as soon as he did it, like all I could hear in my head was like "Bad to the Bone." and so, I just messaged the guys like, "Let's play "Bad to the Bone," and that's usually how it goes. It's just some moment will happen that will remind us of a song, and if we know the song, we can just play it. If not, everyone can like real quickly and quietly, check it out on Spotify and learn it well enough to play like through a section, and then you're off.
That's amazing to be able to like sight reading is one thing, but to play it by ear is like is a totally different thing. At least for me, because that's how they taught us in schools. Like you read music and then you learn how to play. Like sight reading is okay, but to play by ear is like it would take me a little while to figure it out. Yeah. Do you guys have
especially in that high pressure situation?
Yeah.
Right? Like if you don't learn it, it's one of those things you have to develop your ear training. Sorry.
No, you're good.
Like a horn going on. Does this kind of stuff happen a lot on podcasts? Random noises.
I don't know. I didn't get picked up on my end, but I don't know.
Good. You have to be able to identify, the harmonic and melodic elements very confidently. I remember earlier on in like my ear training abilities where it's like, okay, I think I heard, for example, like 2-5-1-6, and then I'd go to play the chords and like a couple of them were wrong.
Yeah.
And there's not any room for that on the show, and luckily, like, the players we have in the band are able to, like, take care of that, you know.
Yeah. Do you guys all have like a headphone in when you send them like a Spotify link, or do they play it? Or do they play it like really quietly?
It depends. Like, most everybody in the band has their earbuds with them, but I've definitely been up there nights where, like, I didn't have them, so I'll put the volume at, like, you know, just like put it right up to my ear.
I think I saw you do that once or twice, and I was like, "What is he doing?" Like, that's cool. Behind the scenes stuff for shows like this is always like fascinating to me for all the different, especially another thing that is really interesting to me is like y'all's relationship with Red Band and the soundboard, because sometimes like sometimes there'll be somebody will make a joke and then like Mike will hit the drums, but also sometimes Red Band will like hit something on the soundboard. And was that relationship difficult to kind of hash out, or was it how does that work? Because there are times where I could see like either being appropriate.
Yeah. Sometimes it doesn't work. That's a thing that we've never really talked about. Everyone knows that, like, that's a thing that Red Band does. I think if it's like a mid-interview thing, most of the time we try to yield it to Brian.
Yeah.
Like, in terms of what happens during the show, and these are like unspoken rules. No one's ever said this, but over time you start to see that that's how it works. It's like, oh, band plays music between stuff. Brian plays the soundboard during stuff. But then there are those moments where, like, we want it to grow and swell into something more. So sometimes it, like, travels from soundboard to band. Sometimes it ends up being soundboard and band at the same time. Like, if a thing happens that we've seen before and we know what Brian's about to do, we'll play with it. Other times there are awkward moments where the band is like, yeah, let's play something, and Brian had a totally different idea, and you get both at the same time, and it sounds crazy.
Those moments are kind of funny though, because like nobody, it's just chaos anyway, so it just fits in. Like, nobody, I feel like people don't notice it as a mistake. Not that it's a mistake, but like people don't notice it in that way. People, it's just more chaos.
Yeah, I feel the same way. It's so interesting how all that ends up working. You know, it's just that because so little of it is planned and so much of it is about the chaos. It's like, kind of, we know mistakes are going to happen, and we know that they're going to be, like, beautiful in their own way, and it's all good.
Yeah, it's gold. I feel like by this point as well, I don't know if this is, you can tell me if this is completely off base, but by this time you've been on long enough that you kind of like feel like you have license to try different things now. Like, you've talked to Tony enough times and he knows that, like, he trusts you guys to do your job. So you feel like maybe like you can try different things out. Is that a fair statement? Definitely.
He's, in terms of like leadership, he's a very, he does a really good job of like pumping his people up, you know, like feeding them with, you know, the right compliments at the right time, you know, letting us know that, like, it matters to him that we're there, and he's glad we're there, and he trusts us because he's seen what we're capable of. And that's, you know, it's just, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, that's invaluable. You know, I've worked for plenty of artists and you know, maybe just band owners who the only time they ever talk to you is when something goes wrong.
Yeah.
And it's just like, yeah, you know, like, mistakes happen, bro, especially in this business. And Tony hardly ever mentions any of that stuff. He just, like, waits for the right moment to say, hey, you know what, that was awesome. I'm glad you're here. And yeah, we've got a lot of trust. I think that's one of the benefits of, just having a good team and hiring a good team. It's like so little has to be said. You can just move forward.
It's also the other thing is when you get up to like that high of a level of performance in whatever industry it is, like when you messed up. Like you don't have to have like you don't need somebody else to be like, hey, that was bad. You're like, yeah, I already know. It's like I already know. Don't worry. Even like in sports and stuff as well. It's like, hey, you didn't track that runner. It's like, yes, I'm aware. I messed up. My bad.
Yep.
I got one or two more questions about the Kill Tony, then I want to move on to kind of your musical background, and then we'll go from there. But with do you get to know the guests beforehand, like before everybody else? Are you aware? And then if so, are there ones that like you're excited about, or if not, also like when you see it, like the rest of us on when he like puts up the premiering thing? Well, I guess that's 2 weeks later, but
no, we don't. They keep it a secret, and for the most part, like I think that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
There was a moment a couple of weeks ago when the guest came up on stage, and we just we kind of like had a deer in the headlights moment. We didn't play anything at all, and Tony called us out like on the mic. He was like, "Yeah, play some fucking music." And afterwards, I was thinking about it. I was like, "Man, why did that happen?" Because I usually feel so like we've gotten to the point where like everything that happens on the show, I feel pretty comfortable. There are some guests who come in, and we always get to meet the guests right before the show starts.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I find out like who's going to be on the show tonight. And they'll come in and there'll be introductions, and sometimes we'll talk about it. Like, is there a song that you would like the band to play as you walk on the stage?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of guests have had songs that they want to hear. But then sometimes that conversation doesn't happen. And in this particular case, we were not too far on the heels of the show where we had no guests.
Mm-hmm.
And on that show, the only thing I had to like intentionally play toward the beginning was like the Andrew WK song for Hans.
Right.
And so I think for whatever reason on this particular night, they were getting ready to bring the guest up, and I was still thinking, Ready to Die by Andrew WK. And then they said the guest name, and I was like, oh, wait. That's not what we're supposed to be doing right now. And I was looking, toward the guest.
Yeah.
So I don't even know, but the band they were probably looking at me like, hey, what are we going to do? And I wasn't even.
Are you the one that cues all the songs?
No.
For the most part? Or is it kind of a mixed bag of...
Yeah, it really goes like everyone takes responsibility for that. So like when something's about to happen, we all look at each other and just like, kind of make eye contact. You know what song we're doing? You ready? Okay, let's go. It's very much a mutual thing. And I think that's part of what happened on that particular episode. Since I had no idea what we were doing, we were all like, we're such a cohesive unit that when one of us feels confused, if everyone else didn't have a plan before that, then we're all confused.
Yeah.
I bet Mike was sitting there looking at me to say, like, what are we going to play? And I never even, I don't know. I'd have to go back and rewatch it, but yeah, sometimes, just like we were saying before, it's like we're humans, mistakes happen. Yeah, it's good when they do, because, going forward, we can be more intentional about like having that conversation and making sure that we're, just ready up front.
Yeah. Do you have guests that, because I think he said several repeat actually, I take that back. There was one episode, don't remember which one, but like Rogan showed up halfway through it, like high out of his mind. I think he was with Duncan.
Yeah. And then
yeah, I know.
Come back.
Yeah. Like how, like, so when he just pops in like that, and then in a case like that, is it just like, all right, and you just keep going? Or was there like, It was people like for us watching at home. Everybody was like, a, "What the fuck just happened?"
I can only imagine. Yeah, Tony knows who the guests are going to be. You know, he invites these people, and he had invited Joe and Duncan for that night.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, Joe's like super big, super famous.
Yeah.
So I think like whatever Joe wants to do, he probably just does. You know, and there's so much going on with the show that if like people pop in and then pop, like you said, the whole chaos thing, it works no matter what happens.
It does. It worked. It worked.
So like, yeah, if Joe wants to show up high out of his mind and then leave, it's like, well, that's the Kill Tony show. But yeah, it's just kind of goes how it feels like going that night. But Tony definitely knows who the guests are going to be up front, and you know, sometimes things just don't go as planned. Like we've had guests that, you know, their flight was delayed, so they couldn't even make it. We've had guests who last minute picked up another thing, like just another thing that they couldn't miss, and then they don't show up, you know. So
are all the guests, when you meet them beforehand, are they all like as they seem on their podcasts and stuff, like Akash and Joe and all these guys like who seem, is that them for the most part? And obviously I don't want you to throw anyone under the bus, but like, is that for the most part the vibe? That's how they all are.
Yeah, they're all pretty genuine. Yeah, like, you know, especially Ron.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Ron really goes out of his way when he's a guest on this show, and it's like this incredible thing to see because, you know, he's been doing it for years. He doesn't owe anybody any extra effort, but he does anyway. You know, the last time he was on, he poured the whole band a drink of his. Oh, this is bad. I'm blanking now.
Tequila.
Yeah, I guess it was tequila. I couldn't remember if it was tequila or whiskey. Like I
think
said,
tequila.
I'm not a big drinker, so. But it was just this cool moment. He like poured us all a drink, and we were on stage, you know, with Ron White sharing a drink, and it was this cool thing. And a lot of the guests, they're very much like they are, like they get to really be themselves on the stage. For better or for worse, right? Some of them get pretty wild, and that's the way they are when I hang out with them in the green room. And yeah, it's a pretty genuine depiction you're getting there.
Yeah, I think that's one thing about comedians that people like. It's like you hear stories come out of Hollywood where like so and so seems nice on camera, and then they're a horrible person, like off screen or whatever. But I think comedians have, by and large, they're just kind of that's who they are. I think people really gravitate towards that. Yeah, no, that's really cool to hear, because I think like that would be horrible if it came out that like, I don't know, Ron White was actually a dick. It's like nobody like that would be like. All right, I got one more Kill Tony question, and we can move on. I think there was one episode where I think it was just you and Mike, like a month or two ago, and you guys went like the musical style was, I'll say a little bit different, and then I went in the YouTube comments that it was the same. Is that something like that you and him had not necessarily talked about before, but is that the music that you more like to play, like that you guys more like to play? And since D and John weren't there, you guys could just kind of do your thing, or because it seemed watching it like every interlude, you guys would just look at each other, nod, and then like jam out, and it was like really cool to watch.
Yeah. Well, what happened was actually I can't remember what happened to D. I don't know if he might have got sick that night. He might have had COVID that night.
Mm-hmm.
And John was just out. You know, John's in and out because he tours with Gary. And so we didn't find out till like you know, basically an hour before doors that it was just the two of us. And so really the musical decisions that we made were more for like the purposes of functionality. I was like, you know, like what can we play that's high energy, but that just works, you know, guitar and drums. And I had my whammy pedal with me, so I could like add an octave harmony to kind of like kind of simulate bass. It's still not bass, but it at least kind of fills out the sound a little bit.
Yeah, it gives it a little more depth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so from my first thought was just, you know, what kind of music is high energy but works very well as just like a guitar bass thing, and that's like any kind of riffy kind of rock and roll. So bands like Led Zeppelin and Rage Against the Machine. And like I grew up with Rage Against the Machine, so I know most of those songs by heart. And I looked at Mike and I said, we're just going to play Rage Against the Machine songs all night. And he was like, dude, I am down. And yeah, kind of like equal parts because it works and because we love that music, you know, let's do that. And that was the end of the thought process there. I knew people were going to dig it because, you know, those riffs are such high energy.
I think the one comment I saw, this is like my weirdly good memory sticking out. I saw one comment that stuck out to me was like, Matt and Mike are left to their own devices and I'm fucking loving it.
You know, D Madness is such a spectacle. He's such a spectacle. He gets love in the YouTube comments like every week.
Yeah.
Whether he's there or not. You know, this last show that he couldn't make, I was going through the comments and everyone is just like, where's D Madness? You know, John gets a lot of love. Mike Gonzalez gets a lot of love because, you know, at this point they've had a couple of drum offs and like, you know, he's got a grin that's like 2 miles wide.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, people only mention me once in a while and like, that's cool. But every once in a while I'm like, man, I could use some love. The Rage Against the Machine week, I kind of got my like YouTube comment bucket.
You got your fix.
Yeah, it's like, all right, they like me too. That's cool.
That actually brings up one more, because sometimes people will play guitar, and I don't know. I know with other instruments, like it's like the unwritten rule that people don't really borrow. I guess sometimes I don't know how true that is for guitar, since you're not like putting your mouth on it like it would be for a trumpet or something else. But like, well, I guess one, is that sort of the unwritten rule, and two, how does that normally, like, what's your, like, because you're just going to give this random person your guitar, that's probably, I would say, fairly expensive as you do it for a living. What's going through your head? Like, how does that work for you?
The first couple of times it happened, it took a lot of like, it was a bit of a leap of faith on my part. You know? I was just kind of like, man, this is Tony's show. He's been doing this for a while. He wouldn't ask me to put myself in jeopardy for this moment, I don't think. And there's been so many wild and random things that have already happened tonight. I'm kind of just curious to see what happens. And so I passed the guitar. And that time, that guy ended up being like a pretty decent player. You know, I was like pleasantly surprised. And so from then on, I was kind of like, all right, well, maybe people who want to play guitar on stage are doing so because like they're decent and it's gonna sound good. So maybe this is like a safe bet most of the time. But there have definitely been guys that came up and I'm like, I wish I hadn't done this. And not because I was worried about the guitar, but just because I didn't like it. You know, it was like that was not good. I don't like to judge people too harshly, but it's just like, man, you're in front of a live audience. Like, if you're gonna say you do something, like, let's do a good job.
Well, also these people say they do comedy, and that doesn't always go so well.
Yeah, exactly. And so at this point, I'm trying to kind of like develop my, you know, my sense for, whether or not like a guy's going to be good.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of hard. Um, there was a guy that came up one night and uh, he wanted to play guitar, but there was something about him like I didn't feel good about it, so I didn't let him. And so
Did
then
you did you veto it? Sorry, go ahead.
yeah. So then he sang, and he was amazing. He was like a really great singer. And so I was like, man, hearing him sing, like now I feel okay about it. And I told everyone, like, well, if he wants to play guitar now, like I trust him.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like I don't know, there's a little bit of an unfairness to that judgment call because like none of these guys are professionals. So like I can guarantee that it's only going to be like at a certain level. So I shouldn't be like, I shouldn't be expecting just like impeccable, flawless guitar playing. I should and just be willing. It's just like managing my expectations.
Yeah, but also it's like it's your baby, so I mean it's both. I don't know. I feel like some people can. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. That would be a weird, especially if I didn't want to do it, but like the crowd was like, "Oh, you should let him do it." I'd be like,
Yeah, it's interesting. Like that guy yonder. Like
mm-hmm.
I know him, and I know he's a great player. So I got no problem. Like, oh
Mm-hmm.
yeah, this is gonna be cool. Watch this. Hand it over to yonder, and he's gonna kill it. But then yeah, some guys, I'm like, I already know this isn't gonna go well, but this is Kill Tony. So it not going well is also gonna be like just as fun as if it goes well. So here you go.
It's like, here you go. This because the jokes afterwards are always so quick with it. All right, so I want to move on a little bit to your sort of background and how did you was guitar something all that you were all music was something you were always interested in, or did you pick it up like as a hobby and then just happened to become really good at it and maybe you thought, oh, I could make something of this, or how did that process go for you?
It's more like the second thing you said. Um, when I was in like fourth grade, they did the thing where they come through and they start talking about the band and orchestra programs and
Mm-hmm.
you can join and do this. And I wanted to play like the drum set in the band, I wanted to be like on the snare team, like on the marching band squad,
Yeah.
some type of percussion. But they literally discourage everyone from doing that because everyone wants to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, okay. And I talked to my parents about it, and they were really for the orchestra thing. So I started out on viola in orchestra for
Mm-hmm.
a few years, and we did the whole 9 yards. I got into private lessons, and I wasn't enjoying it, so I just quit. But then over the summer, that was like right before high school. And over the summer, I kind of realized like, oh, I really don't like just not playing an instrument. So I want to get into something. And my mom had a guitar, so I just started tinkering with it. And all through high school, I just played as a hobby. Um, Out of high school, I was trying to go. I wrestled all through high school. When I graduated, I was trying to go to the Naval Academy and wrestle out there. Um, and the first application failed, and it didn't have to. It was kind of like a clerical error on my part, but it gave me this opportunity that first year in college to kind of rethink everything. I took a piano elective just on a whim to fill out my credit hours. and I was playing a lot more guitar because, you know, I wasn't at wrestling practice for 2.5 hours after school. And between like the piano elective and just having more time with the instrument, I really fell in love. And the second year of college, I changed my major to guitar performance. And I was going to community college, so you know there was a point where it was like, well, you've got to go off to real college somewhere and get a degree. And so we looked at a few places, and the University of North Texas was like actually a less expensive option because it was in state. I grew up in Amarillo, so it was easier to go to North Texas, expense wise. And so to add to that, the winter of, I think, 2001, I messed my ankle up really bad. I was at like a rehearsal, and we took a break and went outside, and I got up on the roof, and some of the guys were like kind of messing with me, and like everybody knew I was a bit of a daredevil, and I had jumped off that roof before, and so they were like, well, can you do it for distance? Like, can you make it this far? And I was like,
oh,
sure.
Jesus.
And I was like, yeah, sure can. Watch this. And like, I shattered the cartilage between my ankle bone and my leg bone. And I mean, that's a story for another time. That was a really serious injury. I was in a cast for 9 months. So back at home, I was just like, I didn't have anywhere to go, anything to do. So I was just in my room practicing all day. And I think I drove my dad nuts because he got on the computer, filled out all the paperwork, got a bunch of student loans in place, and like sent me out the door. He's like, you're going to North Texas. And so that was a really cool thing, but it was also scary because UNT is such a serious music school. And I went out there not knowing if I could hang at all. And even when I got there, I didn't quite know what to do. My only options were classical performance, which I was seriously underprepared for, or jazz performance, which I was also just seriously underprepared for. But if I had gone classical, I would have to like spend all my time with acoustic nylon string guitar. If I had gone jazz, I got to play electric. And so,
no brainer.
Yeah, not knowing if I could succeed at either one, I just went with the one that I was going to get to spend the most time with my guitar. The guitar department head was like, well, at this time, the music program, like kind of regulations were different at North Texas. Like, because I've heard about kids going off there and just not getting in. But I had already gotten into the school, and so the guitar department head told me, we can't turn you away. Like, you're already a student in North Texas. But also, if you're, after a couple of semesters, if you're not hacking it, like, we're going to definitely counsel you to, like, change your mind, basically. And I think having that fear of, like, possibly, like, getting the boot helped a lot, because I was very motivated to basically catch up. I was way behind everybody else. Some of these guys come into that school, they've known they wanted to study jazz their whole lives. They can read and they can improvise and they get into high lab bands right out of the gate. And I was just like, what's a 2-5-1? What? So I had a lot of work to do to catch up, but I was down to do it. And by the end of my time there, the guitar department head came up to me at my senior recital and was like, "You did good, man. I'm proud of you." So it was like kind of my first mini success story. You were asking how did I get into it?
Well, from that point though, like, was going professional, like being a professional guitarist, that was the option at that point, kind of.
I think the moment that I was still in community college and decided, oh, this is what I want to do now. That was kind of the moment where I was really starting to think, well, I want to play guitar professionally. And then, like being able to succeed at the North Texas program kind of cemented the idea. I was like, okay, I've got what it takes. I can do this. This is what I want to do. And so I had formed a band at the time. We were trying to figure out what the next step was for us. And Austin was like a big music town, and at that point in time, fairly comparable cost of living wise. So we came here, and it was this kind of like 10-month long, uphill push that just ultimately resulted in failure. The band leader / primary songwriter was just like, this isn't working. So here I was, less than a year in, at a brand new city, like just kind of like square one, I don't know what to do now. And I had to reassess a bunch of things because.
And this was about like what, 2008? You said?
Yeah, this was 2007. 2008. I had been just working like a day job and putting all of my musical effort into the band only. And when the band broke up, I had this decision to make. I was still missing Denton a lot. I had some friends there, and I was thinking to myself, well, I can either go back there, kind of try to start over there, or I can stay here and like really start from scratch. I hadn't tried to integrate into the scene because I wasn't necessarily trying to be a professional musician. I was just trying to make a career out of this band. And I decided that like going back to Denton would kind of be going backwards, so I didn't want to do that. So I stayed in Austin, started going out to jam sessions, trying to integrate into the scene. And that was a really hard time period for me. I got a job working for a moving company and was just barely starting to pick up gigs and still needing to go to jam sessions and network because, I didn't have a lot of work. So between, like waking up at 6 a.m. to move furniture all day and then playing gigs and going to jam sessions, getting home at like 4 a.m. to go to sleep. I wasn't sleeping much and, physically exerting myself. 8 to 10 hours a day for this crazy job. And I was dirt broke, and it was just like, what am I doing?
So then you kind of like, when you say the scene, so like for people, including myself, that have no idea like what that actually entails, when you get hired as so let's say somebody needs a live band, do they look for like a band, or do they look for someone like with John? Do they look for somebody to put a band together, or like they just have one gig, so they just like, okay, I need a guitar player and a drummer and a bass player, and then they just like find them individually, or like how does that work?
It depends on what they're looking for, but most often they're trying to hire a band. And the thing is, within a music scene, there are bands, but for the most part, you've just got like a bunch of professional musicians, and they're able to do a lot of different stuff. So yeah, they'll form up and create this band over here, and then some of those guys will form up with other people and create this band over here, and there's just all this like mixing around. And when someone who plays in multiple bands ends up getting booked for one thing before the other band gets booked on the same day, then there's like a slot to fill. And then when you're new to a scene, that's kind of what you're hoping for, is just like getting called to sub for other guys. So, sorry, pardon me for 1 second.
You're good.
So when you're new to a scene, you're really looking to get as much of that as possible until people start to know your name and know your face and start working with you more often. So the best thing to do is go out to jam sessions and meet other guys who play your instrument and hopefully impress them with playing. And then it's like, yeah, dude, let me get your number. I might need a sub for this. Or sometimes other guys, drummers, bassists, and keyboard players will also, be impressed and want to get your number. Like, the whole idea is to network with other musicians so that, they can start calling you for work.
Yeah. So you're a viable option for them. Yeah. What is you mentioned jam session. So is that like similar to like what an open mic would be for comedy?
Basically, yeah. Like in Austin, there's several places that have jazz jam sessions that go on. The Elephant Room is one. Long Play East is another venue. And then I even host a jazz jam session at a venue called the Volstead on the first and third Sunday of every month. But then there's also places that host like blues jam sessions. There's even spots that host like bluegrass jam sessions. And I think depending on like the styles of music you get most into, you meet kind of people that can like help you find those spots.
Yeah. When you're hosting them now, but does most everybody who's in Austin at least kind of go through a similar sort of path of jam sessions and subbing for different bands and gigs and stuff? So now that you've been established, do you have I feel like obviously when you get booked for a gig, you want to find the best people, but also do you have gigs where you're like, this one is less important, I can give somebody a chance type deal?
Yeah, there's definitely, the phrase less important feels kind of harsh.
It does, yeah. But, I couldn't think of a better phrase, but.
Well, I can't either. I think it's accurate in a way, whether it's harsh or not.
Or the stakes are lower, maybe.
Yeah, it's like, this gig is with these people who are kind of in this lane, and that's not exactly the direction I'm going with my careers. But even though I play with that group, so maybe it's okay to like sub that gig out, or a lot of times what happens is it's just like the person who books the farthest out wins. People, and I get this a lot. People will try to book like a week or less out, and it's like, yeah, I'm not available.
Yeah.
There's no way I would or could be. And then, some people will book a month out, and like a month is a pretty good range. Like you can usually get who you want if you book a month out. But for between like 2 weeks to 8 weeks, like there's a little bit of a gray area because that's kind of the range people are shooting for. So like so-and-so might call me for a gig in April, like late April, and I'll say yes, and then maybe a week later someone will ask me for the same date. I'm like, oh, I can't do it. But here's a list of like totally competent guys that I know that I'm happy to share with you who could get the job done for you. And you only really get that list from meeting guys, like either going out to hear people play, or guys that come to jam sessions and get their name and number after you hear them. You've got a pretty good idea of what they can pull off for a band leader.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
Is it sort of the same in, well, I just had a stand-up comedian on the podcast. His name is Nathan Habib, but I was asking him basically like, are the musicians in, so I asked him basically, are comics in the scene like help, is it like a community almost? Is it the same for musicians? Because again, like with other, like it used to be, from what I've read and listened to, it used to be there's like a limited number of spots, and so people are much more competitive. But now, like with the internet and different things, there seems like everyone can have a chunk of it. Whereas like for soccer, which is what I'm involved with, there's still a limited number of spots on a limited number of teams, and so like people will help you out if they like you, but also like they want to get theirs. Is it more the cooperative side for music at this point? And if so, has there been a shift, or like kind of explain what that sort of situation or the community is like in that way?
It really varies from city to city. Austin is a very open and warm, like a very loving community. We all try to look out for each other. And it wasn't always that way. Well, I don't even know how to articulate what it used to be like. But these days, it's very open and warm and encouraging. People are definitely pushing each other to hone their craft, but in a very like loving way. It's like, I've been working on this. You want to get together and shed with me on this, and kind of stuff like that. Oh man, I need a sub. Like, are you available? Like, oh, my friend is an excellent keyboard player. You should call him. It's like, oh, sounds good. I take your word for it because I know how much you value quality. And there's just a lot of like love and support in Austin. Like a city like New York, there's a very serious competition in New York. Everyone is like, oh look, you're frozen. Can you still hear me?
I can hear you, yeah.
Okay, good.
You were okay, yeah, you're back.
It's hard for me to like accurately articulate everything about the New York scene because I've only been there a handful of times.
Yeah, but just for like the people listening to this are gonna have no idea. So like if you can just even just generalize, it's all good.
Yeah. So New York's very competitive, and that's just like it's a hard city in that way. And then a scene like LA is very oh man, I hesitate to say this, but this is the report I get back from a lot of people because I don't live there. But like the scene in LA has a reputation for being like very, very artificial. Like everyone's about the hustle and the networking. So they've all got everybody's got a pitch for you, like as soon as you meet them, a city like Nashville, there's a lot of, seems like the cities where there's a lot of corporate industry stuff, there's a lot of like kind of that thing that I'm talking about with LA going on. I don't think Nashville's as bad. Like from what I know with the Nashville scene, like it's got a strange mix of what's going on in LA where there's like a lot of like, here's my card, ding. And but also a lot of what's going on with Austin where like the musicians themselves beyond the industry side, everybody's real warm and supportive of each other. It's also like, from what I can tell, it's hard to make a decent wage in town in Nashville. Like, you do have to get plugged into the corporate thing, because the gigs in town are just like, yeah, do you want to play at this bar for 4 hours for $50, you know?
And in Austin, you don't have to do that. Austin is much more direct there's not really like the agents and the middlemen and stuff. Is more with like, people want to hire musicians and they go directly to you. Like, they call their friend who they know that knows you, and then it goes like that.
Yeah, from what I've seen, there's just a lot of there's a lot of trust from the musicians. And I think the musicians here take that very seriously and make themselves, they take a lot of care to make themselves into the best professionals that they can be. So if you call a guy that I recommend, he's going to show up on time. He's going to have done his homework. He's also just going to be an outstanding player, and he's going to be a great hang. And everyone takes care to be that kind of person and recommend those kind of people and encourage each other to be those kind of people. And as a result, we've got this pretty amazing scene where there's just like kind of an overall air of trust that you're going to get a good guy for the job if you asked a good guy for the job and he recommends someone else.
Yeah, that's really cool. I think a lot of places have lost that generally. And because of that, you get people moving to Austin all over the place. Yeah. Do you, like, to me, that sounds amazing. I'd love to be in a situation like where it fosters it's like the responsibilities on you to be the best that you can be, but also you got the support of like the people around you. Yeah. Like, for me, it's just the best way to go about doing things in any situation. Almost it's like you trust the individual that they want to be the best that they can be, and then you give them the support that they need to do it. And that's what. Do you worry at all that Austin is going to morph into like a New York or LA where it's more like corporate, or like the industry is involved, or is it your sense that the kind of trust, like the community that you guys have built, would be able to kind of not withstand, but like they would look at Austin and be like, oh, this might not be worth our time because they have their own little like thing going on there. Does that worry you at all, or are you kind of?
I have a lot of optimism for Austin, to be honest. I see more industry coming our way, and I welcome it, and I hope more industry comes our way. I also just think the network of people here are warm enough and have such a mindset for have such a heart for the scene that we've developed, that if industry steps in, it'll kind of it'll be basically enveloped by the warmth that is in this city. And so instead of it being a thing that would step in and take over and ruin it, it would be a thing that I would hope and feel like it could come in and be influenced by us and be integrated, but also changed for the better. Yeah, that's, I don't know how much I haven't done any research in that department. There's that's just kind of the feeling I have. That's my opinion.
Yeah,
but it's also my hope.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, but it's like that with everything. When you have a community that's like that, it's like the same way with food. Like your friend recommends a restaurant, it's going to be a good restaurant, even if it's just it's a local, like CM Smokehouse, for instance, is a place that's there, and you recommend it and it's good, and because they have the drive to make their food good, and then the comedy scene, that if you go see William, right, he's got his chance because Tony helped him out, but he's putting in the work and the reading straight from his note cards. But like, yeah, that it just seems like a really cool. Have you noticed the growth in that way, and like in your own, like when you walk down the street and you're like, there's so many more people here than there was like a year ago or whatever.
Yeah, it's really hard not to notice the growth, mostly because there's just construction all over the city all the time. The skyline looks different every year, and it's been like that for a while now. Even the neighborhood that I live in, they're building like a new school like right over there.
Mm-hmm.
A lot across the street from me is just this empty field, but I'm pretty sure its days are numbered because I've just watched all the empty fields in this area just disappear over the last. There's so much growth going on, and it's weird. I mean, maybe I don't go out enough because I don't feel like when I go out, I feel like, oh, there's more people in this room than there used to be. And the traffic, the traffic's always sucked, so it's like it's a little different. But just in terms of like, seeing new structures go up all the time, like it's impossible not to notice the growth here.
It happened with me when I was in college. I would go back. My parents live like an hour or two outside DC, and every time I would go back from college for like winter break, there would be a new like shopping center or a new this or a new that, a new metro station, like whatever. And the same with the traffic there. It's like 95 around DC, I-95 around DC is like, you might as well just walk most of the time, honestly. Even now, people are working from home. It's just like, it's atrocious. So my parents are all pissed off because they put in a metro station like 5 minutes from their house. And they're like, the traffic's going to be horrible. And I was like, well, yeah. It's like, I don't know. Like, what do you want to write the city a letter and tell them to not build it? It's like,
what can you do? You live in a city. There's traffic.
Yeah. So what's we've been talking almost for an hour and a half already. It's wild. What's sort of what's next for you, I guess, in the future of Matt Muehling? You got your Kill Tony stuff. You got your other bands that you're going on. Seeing some of your Instagram posts. So you playing at different places here and there. What's the next couple of years look like for you?
The big thing right now is I put a new band together with a drummer and a keyboard player and a violinist, and it's called Open2.O. And there's a lot of elements just coming together with this group that I'm excited about. Most of the time when you put a band together, it ends up just being a group of musicians, and hopefully someone's got connections and good at booking, and you'll be able to play shows out. With this group, I kind of accidentally assembled a team of like multifaceted artists. Our violinist and our drummer are also very much into like photography and film, and as a result, we have this kind of built-in regular outpouring of content, because every time we get together to rehearse, we're shooting, and our violinist is also she's not a professional web designer by trade, meaning, she hasn't been hired to do that for people, but she very much could, in my opinion. And she's way into that stuff. So she just took it upon herself to like put together a bunch of our materials. And because we have so much stuff together in terms of content and web, and kind of like administrative band infrastructure, even without a manager, like it's just the four of us, we've already got, it feels like wheels and momentum. We've already got like cool shows on the books, months out. We're already getting on the road. We're already doing stuff. We've already got a lot of eyes on us. And it's it's not just a band that's like doing that side of things right. It's also a band that's like really making incredible music and has great players who are respected in their own right, just as players in this community, and have, you know, kind of a reputation for bringing a certain level of excellence to the table. And I think with all these elements being like combined in one little unit, this band seems to be going places really, really fast. And so it's exciting. And I'm hoping to see that, you know, you asked about the oncoming years. I'm just hoping to see that like take off and blossom and become a viable source of income, and maybe alleviate some of the other tasks I take on just to make money. And other than that, I just, you know, I'm on a kind of a never-ending path to try and be a better guitarist and a better musician and a better songwriter, and always be involved with, you know, very creative projects here in town, stuff that just sounds like it has passion behind it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as a professional musician, there's so much corporate stuff you have to do. You have to have a wedding band. You know, you have to be able to like play 75% of, you know, the top 100 chart, just so you can make money. And it's like, man, all that stuff is cool. I want to make original music. You know, how do I make money making original music? And I've been fortunate in that, you know, within the past 5 years, I've become more and more aligned with more and more people who are figuring out how to do that, how to make a career out of making original music. And I'm seeing it blossom and grow and take on new directions, and it's really exciting. And I'm just trying to keep momentum into that.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. Feels good to be surrounded with other excellence, I guess. It's when it almost feels like, not like you've made it, but gives you this good, like, growing up, at least for me with soccer and other things, it's like there's always a weak link in certain things, and when you get to that point where everyone is at the top of their game, it's a very good feeling, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. Just when everyone in the room is firing on all cylinders, and you can trust yourself, but you can also trust the people around you, and then the fact that everyone is so good at what they do, but also so good at working with other people who are good at what they do, that all of a sudden you get this product that's like greater than the sum of its parts. There's nothing like that feeling.
Yeah, I think that is a good place to wrap this up. You said the band was what, Open2.O?
Yeah. And that last O is the letter O. I know that 2.0 is usually like 2.0, but this is Open 2.O.
And is that on, you and the band are on social media and stuff? Where can people find, obviously we'll put all that stuff down in the description, but where can the people find that stuff at?
On IG, which is kind of what we use as our hub for everything, you can just find us at Open 2.0. Here. There we go.
There it is. Love it.
And that'll link you to like anything else you could possibly need. Like the website link is right there at the top of the page, and a bunch of our cool video content is right there. You can get an idea of what we sound like. And, at this point, you just got to keep up with us. You know, it's a brand new band, so we don't have any records out. We're writing new music all the time and playing shows, and you know, who knows when we'll release anything. But a big element of our mantra is just like the live experience. So you got to keep up with us so you can find out where we'll be next.
Yeah, definitely. I'll have to get down to Austin at some point and see a Kill Tony show, see one of y'all shows, and would be a great time. Also, when you guys put stuff out, I'll be on the lookout for it. So those listening, it'll be shared on Instagram or somewhere. Yeah, probably Instagram. But yeah, man, I really appreciate your time. It was a pleasure to meet you. Really enjoyed the conversation. Learned a lot as well. Yeah, all good things, man.
Likewise, man. Thank you for having me.
Of course. With that, guys, we will see you guys next time. Peace.